There's also times where I was like, what am I doing here? I don't think that I can do this for the next 40 years. The ultimate goal should be to live long and die fast. I remember vividly when the movie 300 came out, the word was that those dudes did CrossFit to get jacked. I'll make no money for a while, but we'll make this thing work.
I think that part of business building is, number one, like the true marks of an entrepreneur is how they handle those things.
This is going to surprise most people as a physical therapist.
Hey builders, welcome back to Product Market Fitness. I'm your host, Adam Vasquez. If this is your first time listening, Product Market Fitness is a show about building high performance businesses, bodies, and lives. We talk to founders, athletes, and creators who are stacking wins in the gym and at work, and we dig into how they do both without burning out. Today's guest is a great example of just that. Cody Gingerich is a performance physical therapist, a CrossFit athlete, and a business owner who's quietly redefining what rehab and strength training should look like. Along with his wife, Jess, Cody's the co-founder of Onward Greenville, a PT clinic that blends high-level recovery and preventative therapy for athletes of all kinds, from professional CrossFitters to new parents to weekend warriors and everyone in between. In the episode, we talk about why Cody left the traditional PT world to do things differently, how he built a business by staying hyper-local and community first, what he sees broken in most recovery and training programs, and the mindset that keeps him competing personally and building. This one really hits all three pillars of our show, right? Product, market, and fitness. And we got a ton of practical insight for anyone who's trying to build something on their own. Cody was awesome. But before we jump in, if you haven't already downloaded the free 75 workouts we gave for builders, you can grab them at productmarket.fitness and go get them, productmarket.fitness. Go get them now because they're going to be going away at the end of the month. I mentioned in the last episode, my coach, Daniel Sterling from builtbysterling.com, he and I are working on something, cooking something up that will replace. It's going to be great. It's going to be even better than the 75 that are totally free. However, if you've been meaning or wanting to look at those or just have them in your back pocket, go get them now. At the end of the month, those will go away and something better will be replacing them. And just as a reminder, those are 75 workouts from if you're just starting off to you have a specific goal like an event or a high rocks. There's something in there for everybody. But go get those before the end of the month, and then we'll have something great coming from builtbysterling.com. All right, let's get into it. Here's my conversation with Cody Gingerich. All right, we're rolling. We got Cody Gingerich here on Product Market Fitness. Thanks for joining, Cody.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
This is going to be a fun one because we know each other from the gym. I think you literally you coached my wife, Sarah, this morning, is what she told me.
Yep.
And when I was talking through some of the concept of a couple of months ago, maybe, or 8 weeks ago or so, of Product Market Fitness, you and I did a partner workout during that. And as we were you were pushing the run, which was unfortunate. And as I was trying to get breaths on those 400s, I was also trying to pitch you on why you should come on the show. So thanks for doing this with us.
The hilarious thing is I was pushing those runs, but then you were the one that got to touch the bar first. So I got that 30-second rest beforehand.
It worked out for you. That was a fun one. But yeah, Cody, you're obviously the co-owner of Onward Therapy. Did a little background research on you. Let me just throw a few titles at you here. So you got co-owner of Onward Therapy, faculty at the Institute of Clinical Excellence, L2 CrossFit coach at Reaction Fitness, fitness instructor at Junkyard, Jess's husband. Any other notable titles we should throw in here?
That probably sums it up.
I think the big thing, and one of the big things that I want to learn from you, is where your obsession for community comes from. I just listed 5-6 things. You're naturally involved in a ton of different communities and you're deeply known in each of them. Why is this? Why are you like this?
Yeah, Jess might say that it's too many, but man, I love being around people. I don't think that I'm necessarily a significant extrovert in that I am going to make best friends with strangers at all times. But what I love personally is getting to know groups of people, right? So, and I want to be among people all the time. What fills me up is not like sitting at home and being by myself and watch TV and whatever else. Is there something that we can go do that just surrounds me with people, like-minded people, that I can just relax with that group of people? And so that has allowed me to be in many different worlds, and I enjoy all of them from different angles.
Yeah, I just think it's, people might look at it and be like, oh, of course, yeah, he has to do all that for his business. But if you understood the amount of time this man spends with other people, like, for instance, me, I am not like that. I do get filled up by being by myself. So like, you can't fake that. Where did the passion for fitness come? And then maybe walk us through how that led to going into physical therapy at all.
Sure. Fitness in itself, I think it's obviously, like most kids, it stems from sports. I played most every sport growing up. I played soccer, I played football, basketball, baseball. Those are the main ones that I dabbled in, and progressed baseball and basketball through high school and played at a varsity level there. I remember vividly when the movie 300 came out, the word was that those dudes did CrossFit to get jacked. So then I was like, all right, I got to find some of those workouts that they did. And that was more fun than what I was doing of just like picking up weights and putting them down. And so I was like, knew what CrossFit was, but I didn't have the money to do it. So I'd like randomly find some CrossFit-y type things, but didn't really know I was doing CrossFit. And physical therapy along the way, like I am also fascinated by humans in general and solving puzzles, which I feel like is all physical therapy is. I love having complex puzzles, and I have the patience to be able to find the thing or figure it out. And that seemed like what physical therapy was. And sometime in high school, I had some injuries, but nothing major. I went to physical therapy a couple times, but nothing that was like world changing, right? Where I was like, this is the moment that I'm choosing physical therapy. But it just seemed to make sense. Honestly, I didn't like school that much. So halfway through college, I was like, is there anything else I could do that doesn't take 7 years additional? And I did a lot of looking, be like, would anything else excite me? And nothing really did. So I just kept going, and then eventually got to the end and had some fun along the way.
Dude, it's so funny. The 300 thing, like 100%. I remember that going through, I was in college as well, I think, or I remember when we were in college referring to the 300 workouts, but that was such a cultural moment when that movie came out, and everybody wanted to look like that. And so you went through school, you continue on, you don't like school, but you became a doctor. So what was the motivation behind that? Just curiosity, or what kept you pushing through?
The interesting thing is I hated learning about stuff I didn't care about, is what I learned about myself, is that if I was in the classes that I was like, I know that this is what I want to learn, then that was great. And I could do that all day long. The second that it was like, what is the point of me like having to take a test on this information that I may or may not use ever again, was just an absolute drag, and I hated every second of it. And I'm sure most people can resonate with that. But that's where it was like, man, I just got to get to the end, because like I know that there's things that I can do. And I also had some moments in PT school where I was like, man, I don't know if I made the right call here, because what I thought was physical therapy, as I was then learning, and again, even in the physical therapy world in school, there's a lot of versions of physical therapy that I had absolutely no interest in, but still had to learn and take a test and get my license because of it. And so there was also times where I was like, what am I doing here? I don't think that I can do this for the next 40 years. It doesn't sound as exciting, which kind of led me into, again, more research, more business type of stuff, and figuring out like, how can I make this a better situation for myself?
Yeah, let's get into that, because I want to hear how you started with Onward and all that. But what you do is unique, right? You're not doing the typical physical therapy, from what I understand, or you're not doing just the typical physical therapy. Like I hurt myself, I went to a doctor, my doctor referred me to Cody. Your model is a little bit different. Can you walk us through that?
Yeah, and I worked for 2 years in what you would consider a standard physical therapy practice. And for the most part, what that looks like is exactly what you described. It's a ton of post-operative, like surgical type of things, knee surgeries, shoulder surgeries, back surgeries, etc. And so you're getting a ton of referrals from the doctors in the area on that. Or it is, people, what we call caught in the medical system, where maybe 20 plus years of poor lifestyle choices that has led them to having back pain or knee pain or hip pain or list it. And they're on medication. They've gone to their doctor, and eventually the doctor's kind of, you should try physical therapy. And so now they're coming in and they don't really have a great feel for what even is physical therapy. It's hard to touch physical therapy. And you're fighting this battle of people that aren't motivated, don't really want to change much lifestyle behavior things, and have had a ton of habits that are hard to break. And so then I'm working on this knee pain, but also like, when was the last time you ate a vegetable? And, those things can't be ignored. So they don't want to hear that in that environment. And so that's what got me to what we do now is, yes, we are what we call performance physical therapy, or like fitness forward physical therapy would be the probably more appropriate term for it. Is I'm not trying to be really the motivator anymore, because the way that we market is to gyms, personal trainers, coaches, fitness and active people who say, hey, I've got this thing, but my knee's giving me trouble while I do it, but I really want to keep doing it because I know that my longevity of my life matters because of it, or I enjoy my life better because I am able to run or hike or play with my kids or whatever the answer may be. And so, then they just can come to us. We don't need that doctor referral, and they come and we work through that and with them. And then a lot of times we also have people that are more on like a maintenance program, right? So like once a month, they'll come in, and if you're working hard, if you're training hard and you're trying to improve, you're lifting weights or you're just doing a lot of physical activity, things pop up. It's my shoulder could tweak or my back could tweak here and there, and you catch it before things become a real problem. That makes life way easier. And a lot of times what we say is shoulder pain is not killing 7 out of 10 people in the United States. Cardiovascular disease and diabetes and those metabolic conditions of inactivity. We can deal with some shoulder pain because you're hitting things pretty hard and maybe you overdid it a couple times, but it's hard to go the other route. One of the things we like to talk about a ton is like the ultimate goal should be to live long and die fast, as opposed to what our current medical system does is like you live long, but at about 50, it starts to do this. And then our medical system can kick you down the road a while with, well, what are you doing in those last 20 or 30 years? If you can keep your activity up here and then you hit 80 and then it's like, all right, we can, or 90. And then it's, I had a bad year and we're gone, as opposed to we had a bad 20 years. Much different conversation.
Wow. I've never heard that before. I like that a lot. So you're like, everything else is training to kick that down to make that a quick. Yeah. That's good. Yep. So where did the divide come from? Going back to, you were in school, you were learning about a type of physical therapy or types of physical therapy that you weren't necessarily interested in. How did you find performance therapy, and then how'd that lead to Onward?
Yeah, so that story kind of blends into the company that I teach for as well. So the Institute of Clinical Excellence. So I was in school, kind of in this middle of, what am I doing? Like, this doesn't seem like something I love anymore. And I don't know how, if I'm not even graduated yet, how am I going to make this keep working? I was doing in your third year PT school, you do clinical rotations. And this was where I'd done a clinical rotation. I was like, this whole thing sucks, but this is the avenue of PT that I'm like making decisions to go into. And this Con Ed company came through and did a course very close to where I was doing that. And it just so happened that all of the people that worked in that company were at that course. And I was like, all right, I'm going to figure out a way to do it. I use student loan money to pay for it. And it's not normal to do Con Ed as a student.
Sure. You're in school.
I'm in school. But I was like, I got to see if this thing is any different. And that company was like living and breathing this fitness forward, like, mantra of our mission as physical therapists is not to just get people out of pain. It's like, we need to change lives around fitness. And by getting people out of pain is like step one, but that is not where things stop. And I took that weekend and I was like, I just need to be around these people as much as humanly possible. So I took man, a bunch more courses, spent a ton of money. Like before I was graduated in that first year, again, you don't even have to do Con Ed for the first 2 years of being a physical therapist. And I probably did 6 courses just so that I could keep showing up around the people that I was like, this is the thing. And it makes sense. And so I took the same course a couple times, and eventually they were like, hey, do you want to help out teach this course? Because I think you probably know the material. Okay. And that has been over the last like 6 years, and then have kind of worked my way into being a lead faculty there.
That's awesome. So you felt like that channel, that little offshoot, isn't it more valuable necessarily, but that was like the thing you attached to as opposed to the traditional stuff you were learning in school. So then was that first job you took in that vein of performance?
Not really. So my original goal was at that moment, I also made a decision I'm going to start my own business because nothing that I found right now is good enough that I want to work for. I was going to move home. I was going to live with my parents. I was just figuring out. I was like, I'll make no money for a while, but we'll make this thing work. I also met Jess in a very similar time frame. And that relationship progressed to where we set a wedding date for right after I graduated. And I was like, I'm not asking her to move back home with my parents and to not make any money. And so we got to at least get started somewhere. So we took a more kind of traditional job out of school for a couple of years. So Onward so the company that I teach for, Institute of Clinical Excellence, or ICE, we'll just continue from here on out. It's ICE.
Right.
The guy that owns that, he was teaching and preaching this message. And what he ended up realizing was that like, way in which we want to do physical therapy is very challenging with people coming to these courses, but then going back into the environments that they're working in is very hard to implement on a day-to-day life or day-to-day work schedule. Because the way it works for the most part, I was seeing 2 people every hour. And so I would see 14 to 16 patients a day, 5 days a week. And so 2 people at a time, almost always. And you just can't give quality care that way, but insurance kind of dictates that. You can't make money unless you just see high volume. The math doesn't work. And so it's not really a huge fault to the person I worked for or anything like that. It's just kind of how it was. So they ended up starting Onward. So Onward is a franchise. It started in Charlotte. And so these are all now my good friends and were my good friends before. And so they were talking about, hey, we have this idea of Onward and we can basically just do out of network, meaning we're not working with insurance companies, and started talking about this idea. And so we ended up being like, yeah, we want to jump on board with this like as soon as we can. So we were, I think, the 3rd maybe to sign on with Onward. So Charlotte was a flagship, and they did that for a year, basically through COVID. And then as soon as COVID, we moved in during COVID to basically come to Greenville to start Onward.
You moved here specifically for that? Was that the market you had identified, or how did you come to that?
When we talked to the guys that own Onward, we were currently living in Blacksburg, Virginia, and we didn't want to live there long term. I grew up in Dayton, Ohio. We weren't thrilled about moving back there. Jess grew up in Roanoke, Virginia. It's fine, but weren't thrilled about it either. And so honestly, we just sat down with a map and we're like, hey, where's our top 5 cities that would be cool? And Greenville kind of popped out because we had been in the mountains and we had also been to Charleston and loved that. But we were like, we don't want to live, but it'd be cool to be like close-ish. So Greenville kind of came to the top and came down and visited, and we're like, yeah, this is great. Did a little bit of research on the physical therapy realm and what was going on here, and yeah, it worked. So we moved.
Wow. So you do all your schooling, you become a doctor of physical therapy, which I'm sure isn't cheap. And you finally get your first job. You're in that for what? A few years, you said?
3 years. And then COVID. So we got furloughed from that job because of COVID.
And then you decided to go launch. That's a fairly risky thing, right? Both the fact that it's a new franchise, you're the new owner to it in a new market. Was that at the time, was there any, what are we doing? Or was it just, this is the next thing we're going?
Oh, constantly. It's still that. If we talk about
Me
right now
too.
what we're doing now, it's still, I am very risk tolerant. I would, to potentially maybe a fault. I don't know. It hasn't really bit me in the butt yet, but I'm pretty, things are going to be fine type of person. We knew nobody here, not a single person.
Wow.
And the first 3 months that we moved here, we didn't have jobs when we moved either. We lived in an Airbnb for 3 months because we're like, we want to buy a house, but because if you're building a business, you're going to be here for a while. So we're like, yeah, might as well just get a house.
Yeah.
So lived in an Airbnb for 3 months just to figure out the lay of the land while we tried to look for jobs. We did get to the point where I did 2 days of DoorDash because we were to that point where I was like, this is getting a little tighter than I would prefer.
Wow.
And luckily, after 2 days later, we got a call we worked for home health physical therapy Jess worked a little longer than I did, which is people who are homebound, can't get out of their homes. We go in and do physical therapy there. And so while we were building Onward, had that side gig happening.
Dude, I didn't realize that. So you guys were scrapping, just trying to get it off the ground and doing whatever it took.
Oh, yeah.
And what was fast forward to today, you've got, and I'll put all this in the intro so people, but Onward has multiple locations. You are the physical therapist to Jason Hopper and probably other games level athletes. They have a very strong brand. And I'm sure some of it was consistency, but we're not talking about like a super long time period there. We're talking about what, 4 or 5 years? Like,
so yeah, we're at it's 25, so 4 years.
Year 4.
Yeah.
But again, year 4. So like a college, that's really not that long of a time period to go from DoorDash a couple days a week, trying to get to where I would say you are today, which is like a well-known brand and entity in the space. I'm sure there's a myriad of things, but is there anything you look back on that you're like, that was a key decision or outcome that happened that helped us bring this to market and get to the point where we could make this sustainable?
Man, I think it's just genuineness. And that kind of comes back to the sense of community. And like, we truly care deeply about the message that we are trying to send. And I think because it is genuine, I think people see that as genuine. And so it's not that we are constantly trying to sell this or sell that or whatever else. It's that I truly think that people who are exercising, who care about their fitness, who care about what they're putting in their bodies, like every single person needs to hear that message. And so it's like the bigger that we can get, the more PTs that we can hire, the more people that we can help, and the more that message goes to the masses. And I think just having some passion around that has been the biggest thing. So where it doesn't, and yes, do we get tired and fatigued of running a business and doing all that? Of course, like anybody else does. But there is a level to that where you wake up and this is just what you do. It's just, that's how you live your life, and you're interacting with people, you're getting in front of people, and their strategy to it, of course. But at the same time, it is, doing that day in and day out, because that is just truly how we live our life. And so I think that is the biggest thing of the consistency, because we just care about that.
Yeah. And so like let's just talk about the community part of it for a little bit. So people who don't know, Cody, obviously I mentioned all those things at the beginning, but coaches in multiple places. And also I should say, doesn't coach at normal human hours, coaches at the 5 a.m. class at our gym. I think you're the early class at Junkyard too, right? That's one of your classes.
I always say I can get up and get other people moving at that time. I do not work out at that time.
But you're there, you're motivated. It's a lot to do. You're running the business, all that sort of thing. But you're also like integrated into basically every functional fitness gym around as a connection to you. Did that just come about from, like, walk me through that? Just give me like the founder steps. Were you just DMing gym owners? Were you showing up? How are you getting in front of these people and weaving yourself into the community as a completely unknown entity 4 years ago?
Yeah. So it's mostly showing up for various reasons, right? The number one reason is for someone who's been to different gyms. Every gym has their own vibe and culture. And I think people who are searching for gyms need to have an understanding of what they're getting into. And so if I'm communicating with one of my patients and maybe they have been working out at home or been going to like a Crunch Fitness or something like that, and they're like, man, I really feel like I need this community to get me motivated and that. And so me then having a relationship with that person, I feel like I can say, you know what, I think this gym or this gym would be your absolute best places to go. And so this is me, and Jess does the exact same thing, and we encourage our employees to do the same. But like, that is us wanting the best for others and trying to also help other gyms out and pushing people again into fitness and knowing what the different cultures are. And yeah, it just comes to, hey, I need to work out and just show up, not talk to anybody as far as what I'm doing or doing any kind of sales pitch. It's let me show up and work out and just see what's happening. And that is any of the CrossFit gyms. That also includes, I could list a bunch of functional fitness gyms like we have been to, like Metabolic, Junkyard, Orange Theory, the Booty Shop, like the list goes on, and everyone has their own thing that people enjoy. And so we feel strongly that we need to help facilitate some of those relationships from our patients to those gyms.
But I'm talking about just the tactical. When you came in, are you just showing up and attending classes at those places initially? Just like as Cody?
Yes. Usually it's like 2 or 3 classes.
Okay.
And then it's like, hey, this is what we do. There's also some strategy to, like what you said, you were doing some research on me is.
Yeah, for sure.
Looking at like, if there's a gym manager, let's say, who's also a coach, I'm going to make sure that is the class that I go to.
I see. Yep.
Like I'm going to make sure that the classes that I attend are valuable in the sense of the person that I want to communicate with matters at that gym. Probably more than just like the one person that might do 2 classes. Like the 2 classes that I coach at Reaction, I would not be the guy or the class that I would go and take.
Yeah, I understand. I just think it's super interesting because people, I think, sometimes can get this blockage in their head about what it takes to start or certainly to scale. And it's, I have to have either a specific connection or a particular skill set. And sometimes that's true, but even in restarting this show, there's one guest, I'm not going to say it yet because I haven't fully locked it in, but one guest who is a huge name in the space. And the only way I've been able to get their attention is like I DM'd them on Instagram. I found their email address and emailed them. I found their phone number and texted them. It's just that grunt work of finding a way, and then either it works or it doesn't. And it's fine if it doesn't, but it's not I don't know. Even in your case, like you're not describing something where it was like, yeah, the PT school gave me a playbook that I'm sure they didn't, but it's just like this intuitive sense that you had to be able to be like, yeah, I need to know gyms. I need to know the people who are at those gyms. I'm going to go attend the right classes and figure out a way. That stuff fascinates me. I think that part of business building is, number one, like the true marks of an entrepreneur is how they handle those things. And it's the best storytelling because you're doing that in between DoorDash or whatever, but then you're also going to see a customer of yours and you're taking a fitness. It's just a beautiful thing.
Oh, within the first year of our business, I was by far the fittest I've ever been because I would to go to 2 different gyms in a day regularly. And it would be like, I'm doing this. Because if you don't have clients, then it's what else can I do to meet people or to like push the business forward? And for us, it's like, we just need to know more people and we need to know more gyms. So let me go work out with some more people.
I love that. And you probably hated that, having to get to work out multiple times a day.
Yeah, it was so tough.
That's funny. So what does performance look like for you today, just on the fitness side? Like obviously maybe fast forwarding 4 years, you're not doing, well, I don't know. I don't think you're doing just working out all day. You have like multiple businesses to run and all these different things to do. How do you think about your own performance, your own fitness in the context of everything else that you have going on?
Yeah, man, that has shifted probably the most in the last year, especially with jumping into actually coaching at the Junkyard. At one point, like a lot of CrossFitters do, is, man, I'm going to get the best at the sport of CrossFit. I love competing. I still do some competitions once in a while, but it was like, man, these holes that I have in the sport of fitness are glaring at me, and I need to close those gaps. as much as possible.
Very familiar with that feeling.
Yeah. And they jump out at you every time you go in the gym.
Yeah.
So I had a season where that was my mission. And now it is way more about still working out, but not necessarily hell-bent on the competition or making sure that I am hitting weaknesses. It's way more about and make sure that I'm hitting 30 to 45 minutes at high intensity 3 to 5 times a week. And for that kind of conversation we had earlier of just, I want to live for a long time and I want to do that at a high level, and picking up weights is your best way to do that. And then getting your heart rate jacked up is the next best. And so those are the things that now I'm like, I'm going to the gym. I'm not maybe checking a box is that, but yeah, not going through the motions, checking a box, but now it's just kind of cool. I did the thing that I needed to do to be talking the talk, walking the walk.
Do you have anything like intriguing to you or interesting that you're like, that's like, I don't know, a race or an event or anything that you would think about training for maybe when you have a little bit more time?
So one thing that I did last year that I had never done in the past was I did a sprint triathlon, which I thought was cool, right? And like my fitness allowed me, I didn't have to necessarily put in a ton of effort to build to finish that race, right? Because it was a 400-meter swim in a pool, a 15-mile bike, I believe, and then a 5K run. Took an hour and a half. And I had never really messed with endurance races of any kind. So that was a ton of fun. And have never really swam for any exercise either. And you feel like you're drowning a little bit, even at that 400 distance. I got into the pool a handful of times and it never got better. Just I would need to put a lot more time into that to feel comfortable. But the thing that's blowing up right now that everyone wants, right, is high rocks. I think that looks intriguing for sure. I've had a couple people where I travel enough that I don't want to travel far and wide to do that. And it was just in Atlanta, which would have been great. But I'm hoping that it comes to Charlotte or something and could bounce over and do that. And I've heard from everyone that does it, it's just like, you got to run a lot to feel good about that. I think
it seems like it's
doubles
just a running race.
Yeah, I think doubles would be a lot better than doing it on my own. I don't have that like mental drive to where I feel like I have to just suffer alone in that. I love doing that with other people. So that would probably be the most intriguing. It would have to be one of those convenient things, but
that'd be cool. We've toyed around with some of those things. And I think the hard thing about that one specifically is like, even if you do it doubles, you still have to do all the running at that hard pace for people like us who are not, you are more than me, but if you're not like if running is not your thing, that can get to be a difficult event, I think, pretty quickly.
There's only been one of us here that's ran a 50K race. So
that's
not me.
That's a slow trudge versus what a high rocks takes. I guess the last question I had for you was just, what do you have for anyone who might be listening, interested, entrepreneurial, and trying to grow a business, et cetera? What would be, and this is an impossible question, but I'm just going to ask anyways, what would be like the top 2 things or 3 things that you're like, hey, everybody who is pursuing fitness or has those sort of weights on them should be thinking about these couple things as it relates to their physical wellness from a perspective of what you do? Does that make sense, what I'm asking you?
Is someone who is brand new to fitness or someone who's like trying to do something special in fitness?
Just like, what should people be aware of, or what should be top of mind for people from I don't want to say from a therapy standpoint, but just from a holistic, like, body movement, like what should people be thinking about to hopefully help them prevent maybe having serious injury or something like that down the line?
Yeah, this is probably going to surprise most people as a physical therapist. I would actually say more people need to actually do the fitness than worry about stretching for as long as maybe they do, or warming up for as long as they do. Like, I think some people get so caught up on making everything be perfect before they actually do the thing. I really think that now this comes with some caveats, of course, of like, you you have to be intelligent with if you're lifting based on percentages and things of that nature. And if you feel things getting weird with those lifts, then obviously you need to address them. But I do think that some people almost fear lifting poorly. And so therefore they never actually improve to the degree that they could if they just went in and did it. Now, sleep is going to be the absolute next number one thing. Like, if you are training hard, you must sleep enough. And that is 8 hours a night, right? So if you're lifting weights, if you're running, I don't care what it is. If you are trying to improve in fitness, the only way that's going to be possible long-term is going to be sleeping. The second is going to be making sure your calorie intake matches what you're trying to do. And so that means eating enough to sustain a higher level of fitness, or making sure that you're not overeating and eating foods. And if your goal is to be more on the weight loss thing, but both of those two things matter a ton. And so I think those are going to be my biggest things. Is like, it's not going to be to stretch more. It's going to be like, get in the gym, make sure that your nervous system is primed to lift. But sometimes, like, if you're going to go in and squat, like, grab the bar, do some air squats, hit some body weight, get your hips and your knees moving, grab the barbell, empty. But if you're building at 200, 300 pounds, do it 95. Do a few at 135. Work your way up and just do the thing.
I can attest, I've been there a handful of times. When class starts, we go through all or part of, but probably all of the warm up, are about to jump into the Metcon, and Cody rolls in and rips the thing with almost no priming. So what he practices, what he preaches on that one. What about on the sleep one? Do you like, I feel like that's the tough one for anybody who is pushing in both these areas of business and fitness. First of all, do you do this? And then it's okay if not, but what has helped you get to that point?
So I am currently in a period of time where my sleep is not as good as it should be.
Yeah. Okay.
I would say,
like
when I say it's not as good as it should be, I probably am averaging between 6 and 7 hours.
Okay. That's still, yeah.
So I'm working hard. There are nights that I can. We also just got a puppy like this week. And so that's going to be that'll be another several weeks of less sleep. But parents obviously have a similar situation, right? If you're having young kids or babies or whatever else. But what that might mean is that your intensity at the gym might have to come down. So that's part of, I know that I can't try and be the best at the sport of CrossFit right now, because the effort that would be required at the intensity that is needed to really do that, I would be risking more injury based on the sleep that I'm currently getting. And so sometimes that means when I go in the gym, an 80 to 85% effort is what is going to be great for me on that day, as opposed to a full red line situation. So I navigate that some, and there's some days where I'm like, I'm going to just send this thing and I'll be all right, hopefully. And the good thing about me is I have enough knowledge that if something kind of hurts, I'm like, it's going to be fine. I was probably an idiot today. And that happened.
Yeah, but you can feel that out. I love that. I think it's hard for people who aren't in the arena in those two areas to understand that you have to prioritize one over the other, or prioritize your business or some of the time that you're spending there. Then kids is a whole, I haven't slept through the night in 5 years. So yeah, that's a whole other thing. But no, those are great tips. So be willing to go in and do the thing without being overly cautious, probably make some mistakes and learn from them, get some good sleep, and then try to maintain nutrition. The 3 you said there.
Yep.
Cool, Cody. This is awesome. Thanks for being willing to come on Product Market Fitness. If people want to check out what you're doing, all the stuff you're doing, and we didn't even get to a lot of it. I mentioned it briefly. He's always doing cool stuff. His Instagram, he's always training different places, having Hopper on his table. Like, it's a cool spot. But besides Instagram, where should people check out what you're doing?
That's going to be the main thing. Our business has a pretty cool looking website, I think, and that's onwardgreenville.com. Yeah, that's where I live. My Instagram is my personal Instagram. I communicate like DMs on that. I don't post as much, but I am lurking on that like everybody else is. And So I will see messages come through for sure. My email is cody@onwardgreenville.com. And so I'm happy to answer emails through that too.
Awesome. We'll link all that in the show notes. And yeah, man, thanks for coming on.
Awesome. Yeah, appreciate it.